Heard something suspicious, Control. Will do.
When I say stealth games, what's the first couple of games that come to mind? Deus Ex, Metal Gear, Hitman, Thief, Splinter Cell? Maybe the early Assassin's Creed games will pop up. And they should. Those franchises have one or two of the best games in the genre. But what about the other games? The ones that have to live in the shadows of those massive titles. The kind of game your parents would bring home from Blockbuster for a rental weekend because they vaguely look like the more popular games that you asked for, and they just wanted to pick up the pizza and go home. This is Team Crossbody. This is our look at Rogue Ops, and this is Nostalgia-tards.
Trusted you. You repay all that by spying and plotting against me?
Please, Mr. Van Cleef, I'm sorry. They gave me no choice. Please, don't kill me.
I'm not gonna kill you.
Rogue Ops is a stealth-based action-adventure POG simulator that was developed by Bit Studios and released for the 6th generation of consoles in 2003, which happens to be one of the company's final releases, closing its doors in 2008. From my research, the game had very little marketing. And according to Wikipedia, most of the marketing focused on trying to push the attractiveness of its heroine, Nikki Connors. But other than one page from a magazine called Girls in Gaming, it seems to me that the revenge angle was played up a lot more. Even with the only commercial the game had, Nikki was barely seen until the end. Rogue Ops reviewed right down the middle, with most of the scoring landing in the early to mid 60s, and the game sold very poorly.
Only one part of this matters to me. I don't even know if I remember all of it. But I remember how it started. Exactly. Because it almost drove me insane.
Rogue Ops will have the player take on the role of Nicola Connors, or just Nikki, a former Green Beret who witnessed her young child and husband die in a car bomb explosion caused by a terrorist organization named the Mega 19. Sometime later, a man named Jacobson reveals that her late husband Michael was a part of a clandestine counter-terrorism group known as Phoenix and offered Nikki to join. She accepts, and after 2 years of brutal training, she's ready to be set loose on the Mega 19 and get revenge for her murdered family. You can tell from the name of the two main organizations alone that the plot the game offers is a generic one. The story isn't particularly engaging, with most of it being flat, predictable, and full of cliches. The game does try to interject some life into it with the typical more from the inside angle these type of stories usually go for, but that's far too predictable if you're used to the spy genre to any degree. The game also ends in a cliffhanger, which is the best move to make with your first entry of an untested IP that came after Die Hard fucking Vendetta. The characters are just bland, with most of them not having any form of identifiable character trait outside of leader guy, tech guy, and Schrader. Nikki herself is what you would expect out of a bombshell blonde, whose quips are just as deadly as her work with a firearm, and most of those quips aren't even clever at anything. It's just various forms of edge girl talk, you know the kind. I'm not gonna lie though, a couple of her lines did give me a chuckle here and there.
Well, it's protected by a retina security lock. You'll need to use your retina scanner on someone who has authorized access.
You make it sound so simple, Cody. Any idea at all where to start?
This is Phoenix. What is your status? Over.
Waiting for you assholes to extract me. Over. Peter, your agent inside Van Cleef's organization. We just lost him.
Shit. That could risk the entire operation.
Good to know you care about your agents. Package retrieved. Get me out of here. Now.
Extraction team, inbound.
Wait, Cody. Nikki, is the target eliminated?
Peter, I don't have time for this.
Answer me. Is the target eliminated?
Yes.
Good. Okay, Cody. Send in the extraction team.
And what if I'd said no, Peter?
Nikki, the Tamerlane statue is one of the greatest art treasures of Central Asia, and the Uzbeks have long demanded its return. It's a matter of honor for their new republic. They'd give anything to get their hands on it.
Then give it to them.
If it were that simple, we would have done.
And once again, it's not because it's clever or anything. It's just because of the way she mouths off to her superiors and team members. It's very matter of fact, which catches me off guard from time to time. It makes her a little bit more likable to me. Nikki's character gets a lot of flack for always being pissed off, but I feel like if any character deserves to have this archetype, it's her. I mean, the woman's family exploded. I think we can cut her a little slack in the personality department.
The campaign in the game is made up of 8 large lengthy levels that will ask the player to complete several objectives. The objectives are given to the player through the game's narrative, and the levels themselves are very straightforward, which is a little disappointing because I think the game would have benefited greatly from having more open-ended level design that allowed players to complete objectives in any order they see fit, similar to games like GoldenEye 007 or Siphon Filter. And by straightforward, I mean these levels aren't too confusing to navigate around. And while I don't think being that way is a bad thing or anything, because I feel the level design is one of the best things the game has going for it. Besides, the game challenges the player in other ways. I think one of the best aspects to Rogue Ops, and maybe a subject that gets little focus when discussing the game, is its approach to problem solving. When the game presents a player with a problem, it's not bothered with instantly providing a solution, but instead will give you some type of clue and leave the player to figure it out with the devices they have at hand. The game will also occasionally provide players multiple ways to finish a single task. This can lead to some very satisfying moments of gameplay when you discover what the game wants from you, and some of the answers are admittedly very clever. And I feel these kind of moments would easily be cutscenes in other games.
Good work, Nick. That's got a lot of volts.
This isn't a slowly ramp up and challenge thing either. The game is very clear about the difficulty as soon as you begin the first level. And while some can consider it punishing, I think it's very fair. The game offers checkpoints after passing an objective when it could have easily restarted you from the beginning of the mission. It's not all perfect. Some sections are a little too vague at times, and some of the puzzle answers aren't always compelling. But some credit has to go to Bit Studios for attempting to make a player feel like a field agent who would have to use their wits to figure out all these different obstacles on the fly, which really helps to make Nikki feel like an actual part of each level she's in, at least for a 2003 game. In order to assist with solving these environmental puzzles, Nikki will have access to a variety of gadgets over the course of the game, from retinal scanners to genre favorites like flying drones, and once again, some of the utilization of these items can be very clever at times. The player will also be asked to use objects in the environment to problem solve as well, and these two are very well implemented, with the solution not always hinted at, which once again lends itself to the game's nature of having more than one answer to any given roadblock.
Another thing I like about the game is the context-sensitive icons that pop up for everything she does when it comes to interacting with her environment. I'm sure it's not unique in anything, but I like the fact that there's never a question of what Nikki can do to manipulate the game world. Of course it has its issues, like the player becoming confused and actually missing these prompts because she needs to be close enough for them to actually show themselves to the player, which could cause moments of returning to the same room several times to see if you indeed missed the icon. But it works most of the time. Although Rogue Ops is primarily about stealth, the game doesn't enforce any actual punishment for getting caught in most cases. Some objectives will task you with not being seen at all, and some will actually encourage combat. The cover-based shooting in the game isn't very good, with very wonky aiming, but the developers were ahead of this and did add auto-aim. The locking isn't aggressive, so you still have to show some degree of skill to pull off things like headshots, but it does assist with the game's clumsy shooting mechanics. On top of the shooting, Nikki doesn't move very gracefully during these shootouts, and the weapons, at least for me, don't lend themselves to fighting multiple targets who want you dead, as well as the controls showing their lack of polish in this area, which leaves the shooting overall unsatisfying, which is strange because the stealth element of the game is very well done, to the point that the actual act of combat feels like a punishment for getting discovered. Nikki, in regards to stealth, isn't going to blow you away when it comes down to her moveset, and she won't be pulling any fancy Sam Fisher-like moves during her stealth capades, but what's provided is all very serviceable. The level design feels natural and conducive enough to sneaking around, although I wish Nikki had more places to hide than just lockers. And that's not saying the game doesn't try to do anything fresh, and that's where the game's unique take on stealth comes in. Unlike other games where executing these actions will just involve sneaking behind the unaware target, rogueouts will require the player to stay behind the guard while a bar begins to slowly fill above their head. If the action button is pressed, the player must perform a series of directional button prompts in order to make the stealth kill happen. The more the bar fills up before the action button is pressed, the easier the sequence will be. This is a clever take on the system and adds an interesting amount of risk of reward that the player will have to consider every time they want to take out a target quietly. You can also decide to fire a bullet into them, but this will leave a blood trail for other guards to notice if they're not dealt with quickly enough.
Nikki Connors. The military taught her to kill. Now her target is terrorism, with a full arsenal of covert weapons, high-tech gadgetry, and a mission of personal revenge. Rogue Ops. Rated M for mature.
Okay, you guys been looking at Nikki long enough, so I don't have to tell you what I'm thinking about. So let's address the giant elephant in the room. You guys see that? Nikki used to be a brunette and was turned blonde later on. Rogue Ops doesn't look all too bad for a middleware game release. Character models look well enough, if not a little Muppet looking, and the environments also look and do their job. They all look like believable areas that people will work and live in without coming off in the service of a video game, which makes them fun to sneak through. Each of the game's 8 levels are very distinct from one another, and the game does a very good job of variety, with very few repeated areas. And with a couple of exceptions, these have a good amount of detailing. Some of the texture work can look surprisingly impressive in some places, while others look extremely unfinished. But putting some of the strange moments with the graphics aside, there was a genuine effort to make a good looking game.
Honestly, there's nothing to say in this department. The voice acting is very static and flat, which doesn't help with the game's generic dialogue. It's mostly boring with the occasional lag from a strange line read. The music is almost non-existent, and which tracks the game do have aren't particularly memorable, with the only one that comes to mind being the game's alert track, which is just some bland techno beat. Once again, just boring. Jack C writes, I brought this game because of the picture on the box. Well, forget about seeing that feature in game. You get a rather primitively animated character. So how's the gameplay? Not too great. You'll spend a lot of time standing around waiting for stuff to happen. Wait and wait and wait and wait. for some guy to walk down the hallway so you can sneak past him, wait for some other guy to show up so you can shoot him, wait for the camera to sweep in every direction so you can sneak around it. The controls of the game don't lend themselves to any sort of exciting battles either. If you want to keep your weapon drawn, you can only move slowly. You get a little red dot to designate where you're aiming at, and it's pretty hard to see. You'll stand there getting shot or just try to locate where your little red dot is. Two other really bad things about this game is that it constantly leaves you wondering with no idea where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. Also, you'll quite often fail missions that have no idea what you did wrong. Just try something a little different next time, and try again, and again. Then consult a walkthrough on the internet. The second time I played through it, I got to one point in the game where it was supposed to be a cutscene, which would then lead to the next part of the mission, but the cutscene never played. I did everything I was supposed to do, but the game just seemed stuck there. Anyhow, it was not nearly fun enough to make me want to figure out what was wrong, so I just went to a different game. Overall, I recommend skipping this one. It's just not much fun at all.
At first I thought he was referring to Nikki, but quickly noticed that this game came with an extra gimmick for the Xbox edition, that players can change their weapons using voice commands. I never played the Xbox version of Rogue Ops, but I do have a limited experience with early gaming interests in voice commands, with things like Hey You Pikachu and one of those SOCOM games. And if those were anything to go by, it's safe to assume that it didn't work all too well. I don't get that primitive animated character bit. Nikki's animations are fine enough for me anyway. The complaints about waiting being a huge part of the game is another similar case that was made in our Death by Degrees review, in which someone else is shocked that the game doesn't exactly play the way they wanted it to, and then tries to play it in a way that makes the experience overall less fun for them. For Death by Degrees, someone wanted to turn a beat 'em up with some stealth options to a full-blown stealth game when it wasn't designed or the focus of. And for Rogue Ops, Jack C wants it to be a full-blown shooter. I'm not 100% against this complaint, as the game does let you choose to enter gunfights in most cases, and the controls really should have been polished enough to support both styles of gameplay. But the game is designed with sneaking in mind in the first place, and that element of the game works very well, so why not just play it that way, you dummy? Jack's next issue lies with the level design, and how the game doesn't hand players the answers to puzzles, calling it vague. And in some cases, yes, the game can be vague, but most of the time you're given a pretty clear idea on what to do. Rogue Ops is a pretty slow game in nature, and I believe that gives players a lot of opportunity to assess the environment and kind of piece together solutions. Sometimes that might require a couple of try and error moments, but I always felt that was a pretty important element to the stealth genre. From reading multiple other reviews of this game, this part really didn't vibe with a whole lot of people. And I mean, sure, but in my case, I enjoyed it quite a bit, so I don't see what the big problem here is if you just take 2 or 3 minutes to pay attention. Lastly, he mentions a pretty nasty glitch the game had that actually caused him to move on into another game. I can actually agree with him because I remember this happening to me on the PS2 version that actually prevented me from finishing the game the first time. I played it, and like him, I also moved on into another game when I couldn't find a proper solution. It didn't happen to me for this playthrough, but I can't trash talk the man for a pretty bad glitch due to the game's overall lack of polish. Rogue Ops is far from a bad game. It sure as hell isn't on the same caliber as those beloved and celebrated titles it's competing against, and even if Rogue Ops had the once-over it desperately needed, I still think it would just be okay at best, if not a little above that. There's some cool ideas present that I believe got overlooked because they were compared too harshly to things like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear. I genuinely think that the game's level and environmental designs were very well handled, for the most part, and its take on stealth kills was a fun thing to consider, making the act of sneaking behind a guy and just hitting a button more engaging. There needed to be more instances of the game enforcing stealth, because while I respect the idea of giving people the choice to sneak around or not, the mechanics were clearly not designed with firefights in mind. It's like having a rip in your pants that's just tore enough to still hide, and the game's over here inviting people to take a look at it. The characters didn't help with winning the people over either, and while I can say that I like Nikki as a protagonist with what little personality she was given, the rest of the cast are nothing, and I constantly needed to be reminded of their names. The plot doesn't do much better, and they really could have tried a little harder. It took a huge set of balls to end this game on a cliffhanger, expecting people to be attached to this trash bag ass story and want to see what happens next. We really weren't expecting to enjoy the game as much as we did, and even with the issues, I would say to give the game a legit shot if you're looking for a retro game to play. It really isn't that bad, and I was happy that I gave it another look at. We want to hear how you guys who play Rogue Ops feel about it. Feel free to leave a comment so we can get a discussion going. Have a game you want us to look at? Leave that in the comments too. But for now, we'll see you next time on Nostalgia-tards.